Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Township Stimulus Program webinar. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at Odot, and we appreciate your participation. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation today, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have. Also, in the handouts section of the GoToWebinar panel, a PDF copy of today's presentation is available for reference. With that, we will go ahead and turn things over to Nichole Lawhorn. Hello.
Hi, Mike, and thank you. And thank you all for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy days. But, the Department of Transportation, Office of Local Programs is very excited for this opportunity for townships. And so we hope you're as excited as we are. So again, Nichole Lawhorn, there's my contact information, and there's also a link to our website. We've worked very hard to put together a lot of resources that we hope that you guys find helpful. So if you haven't already, you can check out our website and see what's out there. The topics covered this afternoon, we'll go over the program overview, funding, the eligible projects, our website and resources, and the big one that you guys are all excited about is the application and evaluation process, as well as the scoring criteria. And then at the end, I'll cover some frequently asked questions that I have received from the onset of this program. I have tried to answer most of them throughout the presentation, but there were a couple stragglers, so we'll go over those as well. I will be asking Mike periodically throughout the presentation if there are any questions. So like he said, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll answer them as we go through the presentation. So what is the Township Stimulus Program? It's a one-time program with federal stimulus funds. It's through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And since nobody wants to say that mouthful, we've dubbed it CRISA. So it does, it does lose the federal stipulations and regulations, so it does act more like state dollars and not the federal dollars, which is why we can take it down to the level of township projects. As you guys are aware, most of your projects aren't federally eligible for federal funds, and so we are super excited to bring this opportunity to you. Through the CRISA Act, it did provide money specifically for transportation projects. I'm given to understand there is another stimulus act, the American Rescue Plan, or ARP, and the CRISA funds are different than the ARP funds. So not to get those confused, I'm given to understand the ARP funds have a lot more information required and it's a lot more involved. So the Township Stimulus Program, we did receive $8 million in total allocation for the program. With 1,308 townships, however, it doesn't stretch very far. So I think if we divided it equally, each township would get $6,116 and some odd change. So you can't really do anything with that. ODOT will provide 100% of the eligible cost for all phases of the project, so design, environmental, right-of-way, construction engineering. And even though these are acting as state funds and they are at 100%, you may not use them as a match for any other funding source. So if you have another project that has other funding on it, and perhaps federal funding, you can't use these funds as a match for any federal or state funding. It's paid for at 100%. So with that, we wanted to stretch the dollars. $8 million, as we've talked about previously, doesn't go very far. So we did institute a project cap of $250,000. You have to have a specific project in mind. We're not just going to give you $250,000 to do whatever you want with. So you do have to have a specific project in mind. If you do have a project in mind and it exceeds the $250,000 cap, you are still welcome to apply. We just would only pay out $250,000 if awarded. So then the township would be 100% responsible for anything over that $250,000. Similar to if we awarded a lesser amount based on your estimate, the township would be responsible for anything over that amount. Again, in an effort to stretch the dollars, the project should require no or minimal right-of-way and environmental. Minimal is a subjective in relative terms. So I think what it's going to come down to as far as what constitutes minimal is the cost involved in those phases. So we don't want to get into a major project where then all 250,000 is eaten up with the right-of-way and environmental work, and there's nothing left over for construction. And then as we talked about, the townships, if awarded, would be responsible for all cost over that awarded amount. Typically, with some of our funding programs, we do set aside a small amount for cost overruns and change orders. However, with this program, we are not. We will award the full $8 million. And different from our other programs as well is that those townships awarded money, they're going to be dispersed a check directly to them. These projects are not going to run through ODOT, so your ODOT district personnel will not be involved. These projects will act more like your local projects. So in order for us to get a check to you, you do have to be in ODOT's vendor system to receive the funds. You don't have to be in the vendor system to apply, but you do have to be in the vendor system to receive the funds. And so don't fret, because instructions on how to do that will accompany the award letter. So the money is actually available now. It was available starting July 1st. However, we do have to go through this application process. So the funds will be available once you find out the award status, which we're hoping will be late January to early to mid-February. And then once you get into ODOT's vendor system, you'll get that check immediately. So you could start the project immediately, or it could wait a construction season. However, they do have to be spent by December 31st, 2024. We did instill that date. We didn't want these projects hanging out for years and years. So we do have that date, that deadline where the funds must be fully expended. We are going to request project status updates at regular intervals to make sure that the project is maintaining and progress is being made. And again, more information on that and what exactly we're looking for will be included in the award letter as well. And then in the event that we get audited by the Federal Highway Administration, we are requesting documentation of the fund expenditures on the project. So that could be canceled checks that accompany invoices or daily work summaries, anything to show the work that was being done and then that the funds were paid out. And so then with that, I'm going to pause. And Mike, do we have any questions so far regarding the project overview and funding?
Hi, Nichole. Not at this time, but as a reminder, the questions box is open if you have any questions.
Perfect. All right, so the eligible projects. Because this is a township program, we wanted to keep the funds within the townships. Your counties and your cities, they often have better opportunities for funding, such as Ohio Public Works Commission and other grants. So we really recognized the need with the townships that funding is scarce at times, and so we really wanted to keep this within the townships. So with that, the project must be within township limits, and it must be the maintenance responsibility of the township. So, if you wanted to work in conjunction, say you had a road that passed through the township and part of it was the maintenance responsibility of the township and part of it was the maintenance responsibility of a city or your county, you guys could work together for a larger, more complete project if you wanted to apply for funds. However, this program would not pay for the portion where the maintenance responsibility falls on anybody else other than the township. So they would have to have their own funding source for their portion of the project. Again, require no or minimal right-of-way and environmental. And then we've really lumped these into three categories. So a culvert less than 10 feet in span, diameter, a roadway project, or a sideway project. Unfortunately, parking lots and driveways are not eligible for funding. So our culvert projects, these can be culvert replacements, culvert rehabilitations, or culvert demolition. However, a demolition will be given lesser priority than a replacement or rehabilitation. So this is similar to a couple of our other bridge funding programs. If you've got a road and maybe it's been closed for a while and you don't necessarily need it, but you want to get that culvert off of your inventory system, then certainly a demolition would be an acceptable application. So then we've gotten the question, hey, I have this culvert, but it really should be a bridge. So right now it's the maintenance responsibility of the township, but if we replace it with a bridge, it then becomes the maintenance responsibility of the county. Is this eligible? And fortunately, in this scenario, it is eligible because the original asset meets the criteria set forth in the guidance and through the program. So because that original asset was the maintenance responsibility of the township, it is eligible even though the replacement would then be a bridge that's the responsibility of the county. As long as that original asset meets the criteria set forth, then these are eligible projects. So roadway projects, this could be anything, including but not limited to pavement marking projects, guardrail projects, chip seal, resurfacing, widening, full depth repairs, and then we will include drainage as part of a roadway project. We will not fund standalone drainage projects, but we will fund drainage as part of a roadway. So if you have a road that's in really horrible condition and you're going to tear it up and you think, I want to add drainage as part of this, then yes, that certainly would be feasible. We don't want the road to deteriorate prematurely because there was poor drainage or no drainage. But if you have a road that is in perfectly good condition, you just want drainage, so you're going to tear the road up, that would not be eligible. Please don't apply for that. So drainage as part of an existing roadway project, eligible. Standalone drainage projects where you're fixing the drainage and then as a result, the road has to be resurfaced, not eligible. And then with the roadway projects, we have gotten the question, are cemeteries and park roads eligible? And the answer is yes. If they're within the township limits and maintained by the township, your cemetery and park roads are eligible. Parking lots, again, are not, and driveways are not, but the roads within the park and the cemetery, if they're traveled by vehicular traffic, would be eligible. So then our sidewalk projects. So this could include repairing or replacing existing sidewalk or creating new sidewalk. And so we have gotten a couple questions that, hey, there's no sidewalk currently. We want sidewalk leading into our school. Would this be eligible? And as long as there are two ways that done. So it is eligible if the township, 100% of the costs are eligible, if the township has an agreement with the school that the township will maintain responsibility of the sidewalk. If the school does not want to do that, which I don't know why they wouldn't want to do that, but if for some reason they want to maintain responsibility for the sidewalk on their property, then again, as we mentioned before, the township could work in conjunction with the school for that project. The school would then just be responsible for finding the funding source for the portion of the sidewalk that they are responsible for. And it doesn't have to be a school for this to apply. So if you're putting in new sidewalk, then as long as the township has, a resolution, agreement, anything like that, that says that they will maintain responsibility, that would be an eligible project. Now, we have gotten questions that, so some of the sidewalk is maintained by the township and some of it's maintained by homeowners. Can we apply as one project and pay for the sidewalk that is the responsibility of the homeowner? Unfortunately, that would not be eligible because the homeowner has the maintenance responsibility of that portion of the sidewalk, not the township. However, if you wanted to work in conjunction with all the homeowners, and of course you'd have to get an agreement in place before, but you guys, the township could work in conjunction with the homeowners and propose a bigger sidewalk project. And this would probably get you better bids as far as the sidewalk if you're working in conjunction because it's a larger project. So with that, do we have any, question from Jody. Can a trustee keep a log on time spent to be considered for reimbursement? The same for county engineers' time spent for reimbursement. So a log would be Okay, however, there are certain requirements as far as timekeeping. So you would just want to check, and Jody, you can email me or call me and we'll go through your current system or the documentation so far, but it still would have to be sufficient documentation. So the answer is that it depends, unfortunately. So it would just depend on what you have in place right now. But Jody, if you want to contact me after the webinar, I'd be more than happy to go through it and answer that for you. And then Mike, do we have any questions so far about eligible projects or anything we've already talked about?
So yes, Nicole, in the chat, I copied there a question from Ronnie. Are alleys eligible? That was her question.
Hey, we have not gotten that question before, but if it's a roadway and vehicular, I don't see why they would not be eligible.
Okay, and there's a question in the chat from Neil. Can ODOT stimulus funds be used as matching funds for OPWC Issue 1 project?
No, unfortunately, they can't. Like we said, even though they act as state funds, they are at 100%. So they cannot be used as a match for any other federal, state, or local funding source.
Okay, follow-up question from Ronnie. Also, are shoulder stabilization projects eligible on the roadway front?
So it would depend. If it's to fix the roadway and then as a result you're adding that stabilization, yes. But if the roadway currently does not need any work and you're just trying to prevent future, then no. So it all comes down to uh, if the roadway is the primary project or primary focus of the project.
Thanks, Nicole. Question from Rick. Would a bridge connecting a paved path along a roadway be eligible?
Is the bridge open to vehicular traffic? So if the bridge is open to vehicular traffic and it meets the criteria, then yes, it would be eligible, but it has to be a culvert. So if it's currently a bridge, my understanding is that the townships aren't responsible for those. They're responsible for the culverts 10 feet or less in diameter. So if it doesn't meet that criteria and it's not open to vehicular traffic, then unfortunately it would not be eligible for funding. Okay. Look, can a trustee keep a log on time spent to be considered for reimbursement? And I had previously answered that it depends. So there are certain criteria that have to be met in order to be reimbursed for your time. And so that would depend on if you have an approved time tracking keeping system. So if there are other questions that kind of go deeper into that as far as what your accounting system or what your timekeeping system is, then I'm more than happy to talk about that individually because it's really going to depend on the individual township or county engineer.
All right, thanks. Just copied a question from Ahmad.
If the stimulus funds are spent before December 2024, but the project is not completed, is that okay? So ideally, we would want the project completed. This is just consistent with how we've done things in the past, that even though all the funding is spent, we want to make sure that the project is actually completed, that we put funds towards a project that came to fruition. So ideally, the project should be completed as well. Are striped pedestrian lanes on school driveways, school property eligible with an agreement in place? Unfortunately not. While sidewalks we are getting away from, multi-use path type stuff and pedestrian type stuff other than sidewalks. So the striped lanes would not. Okay, and then one thing I want to go back to with the roadway projects is that, and we'll go more into this too, but There are certain projects where you can put multiple locations on one application, such as guardrail, chip seal, and pavement marking, but anything else would need one application for each asset. So that does include subdivisions and neighborhoods. Unfortunately, if there's multiple roadways, each road would need its own application as well. Let's see. We would like to eliminate a section of a state road for safety reasons as it is a bad curve with poor visibility. It is bordered by property owned and maintained by the township. Might this be an eligible project? If the asset itself is not maintained by the township, then no, unfortunately not, even if the property adjacent to it is maintained by the township. The asset itself that you're applying for has to be the maintenance responsibility of the township. So if it's not, then unfortunately that would not be an eligible project. Is a roadway that goes to two businesses but no exit throughway eligible? It could be. Again, it has to meet that eligibility criteria, but I will tell you that there has been a lot of interest in this program. So that might be one of the lower ranking projects. But as long as it meets the eligibility criteria, I would say go ahead and apply and see what happens. So ODOT payments will only be issued on reimbursement basis. From Michael Miller. No, unfortunately, Michael, this is very different than any other ODOT program. So we are cutting a check directly to the township. None of this goes through ODOT. These are going to act like local projects, and then we're going to request documentation in the event that Federal Highway asks about the spending. And then if you have further questions regarding that, you have my contact information, so feel free to reach out. To receive points for connector roads, can there be more to a road that is not a connector in the project? So I will answer that when we get to the scoring section. What I will tell you guys is do not hang your hat on the scoring. That is not the driving criteria, but I will go more into that, Rob, when we talk about the scoring. Can two intersecting roads be resurfaced on the same application? The intersection itself can, but if you're going further than the intersection, because the intersection would be considered one project, but if you want two different roads and they just happen to intersect, unfortunately, each roadway segment would need its own application. All right, anything else before we move on, Mike?
I think we're good for now. Oh, wait. But wait, there's more. Question from Donna. Can we apply for two separate projects, one for Chip Seal Road and the other for Reseal Cemetery Road?
Yes, there is no limit as to the number of applications that you can submit. Again, there has a lot of interest been garnered with this program, but I have been told there's a difference between expressing interest and actually putting in the work. So if you do have more than one application that you're considering, please go ahead and submit them both or three. It just, we may ask you, depending on the number of applications we get, which one is your priority. Steve, you're jumping ahead of me. What happens if the final cost of the project is below the awarded amount? And so we will talk about that in the later slides as well. Any other questions?
Okay, just copied one more from Paul.
Yes, chip seal can have multiple locations, as can guardrail and pavement marking, because those typically have various locations within a grant and still a relatively low dollar cost. So chip seal, pavement marking, and guardrail. Now you can't combine the three onto one. So if you have a chip seal project and then a guardrail project, that would be two separate applications. Brad, is there a local match required? No, these funds are at 100%. They just can't be used as a local match for any other funding source.
Okay, I think that's all the questions for now. Thanks, everybody. Lots of great questions.
I love it. Okay, so our website and resources, like I said at the beginning, we have spent a lot of time putting together some great resources, or at least I hope you guys think they're great resources, to try to outline this program and explain all the nuances and the process. So if you haven't checked out our website, please do so. There is a ton of information. So it contains our guidance, which outlines the process and then all of the scoring criteria. I did create a frequently asked questions based on a lot of the questions we got from the onset of the program. It does have other resources such as a schedule estimate, oh, sorry, an estimate sample and a schedule sample. And then we have our sufficiency rating input items form as well, and we'll talk about that more with the scoring criteria. And then the big one that you guys want is it has an application link. So that's, you're really going to want to check out the website, look through all the documentation. We have spent a lot of time trying to make it as easy as possible for you guys. And I know that some people think it's easier. Hey, I don't have time to go through this documentation. It's easier to pick up the phone and call. And I'm always more than happy to take questions, but you have to remember there's one of me and 1,308 of you times 4. So I do ask that if you haven't already, please go through all of that material. And then our application. This is what you guys really want to know about. How do I get the money? So I did say the application link is on our website. Applications started being accepted August 1st. And so we are right in the middle of our application period. It is an online application. No paper applications will be accepted. We do have a template on our website so that you can take a look at it and know all of the information that will be required beforehand if you want to look at it before you dive in. Within the application, there also is a save and resume button. So you don't have to sit down and complete it all at once. The big thing with that save and resume button is that it only saves up to what you've entered. And so always ask for it to send you a link, because what we have found out with our other funding programs is that people were saving for once, the first time, they would then go back in using that link, enter information, save again, and not get a link thinking that original link would work. And for some reason, our platform is a little quirky and each link is unique. So always ask for that link or you may lose some information that you have entered. Applications are due November 19th, 2021. So if you were here for the onset of the program, the original date was October 15th, but we did have a couple county engineers ask, due to their workload and House Bill 168 requirements, if we could push that back at all so that they could better help their townships get the information and the application. So we did push it back a little over a month. So applications are due November 19th, which is the Friday before Thanksgiving, if it's easier to remember that than the date. And then who may apply? Obviously, townships can apply directly. It is a township program, but we do realize that not all of them are as familiar with ODOT funding programs or the application process. So we have said that county engineers, metropolitan planning organizations, and regional transportation planning organizations may assist a township in gathering the data and writing the application and submit on their behalf if the township wants them to. The only thing we ask is that the townships must be aware of and in support of that application. We don't want MPOs, RTPOs, or county engineers submitting applications that the township had no idea were being submitted. So that is the only thing that we ask with that. Okay, guardrail, pavement marking, and chip seal projects, as we mentioned before, may have various locations on one application. And again, this is because these types of projects typically do have multiple locations while keeping the project cost low. All other project types must have their own application submitted. And as I mentioned, that does include subdivisions and neighborhoods. I've gotten that question, I think, 4 or 5 different ways, but the answer is the same. one roadway per one application if it's anything other than guardrail, chip seal, pavement marking. So once you've submitted your application, and like I said before, the application is all online with a link. There are boxes for you to upload attachments. So the attachments, what is required is a schedule and an estimate. And this is because we want to make sure the project can be completed by that December 31st, 2024 deadline. We also want to make sure estimate that it's reasonable, that the amount is reasonable compared to the work that you had proposed in the application. So once we get those in with all of your attachments, then after November 19th, we will start evaluating the applications. So the big thing with your application is to make sure that you submit all of your attachments. The titles on the boxes to upload, those are just suggestions. So for example, I had somebody say, how do I upload more than one photo? So if you don't have them all in one document, there's only one photo box. So if you have 3 or 4 different photos you want to upload, you can just pick a different box and upload it. If you try to put something in a box where you've already uploaded it, it will overwrite it. So just one attachment per each upload box. Photos are not required, but extremely helpful because the person reviewing this application may or may not be familiar with the area. So we always want photos to show, hey, the condition that you described within the application, okay, we can see from the photos that it matches. So once all those applications come in, district LPA staff will evaluate their own respective applications. And then at the same time, we have a multidisciplinary committee that will also evaluate the projects. And this includes members from our Office of Local Programs, our Office of Safety, Office of Structural Engineering, and then we always have various district representatives come in to evaluate projects not within their district. And nothing against our districts or our offices, but we all want the money to come to us. We all want to keep it within our district. And so, of course, what we found is historically they say, yes, 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 fund, fund, fund. And while we wish we could do that, we simply can't. So in order to kind of weed out maybe if there's a bias because it's within our ODOT district LPA personnel's district, we do have various district representatives come and evaluate projects that aren't theirs. And then once we get it down to a short list, we will invite a representative from the Ohio Township Association and the County Engineers Association of Ohio to evaluate that short list and make any recommendations. So we do anticipate that notifications will be sent out late January to mid-February. It really just depends on the number of applications that we get. And I see we have a couple more questions.
Yes, we
Let me
do.
scroll up. Okay, could you explain the link process again, please? Do you suggest to submit everything all at one time? You don't have to submit everything all at one time. It's just each time you save, request that link because it's going to be unique each time you enter new information and save. So you're always going to want to request a link if you save, and then always use that latest and greatest link. So for example, if I were to fill out just the applicant information section and put my name, my address, and then I have to rush off to a meeting. So I hit save, I get that link. I would use that link to get back all of my information when I'm ready to sit back down again. So then let's say I started filling in the project description and, any right of way, and I get interrupted yet again and have to run off somewhere else. So I hit save. I need to request that new link. If I don't, then all of that information I entered between the last save and now, I can't get back if I don't have that unique link. So the link changes each time you save it to account for the information that had been entered. So you will always want to request a link when you save, and then always use that latest link. We found that out the hard way, unfortunately. Do township trustees need to pass a resolution requesting approving a county to apply on their behalf? No, they don't. You don't have to pass a resolution to apply. You don't have to pass a resolution to have a county engineer apply on behalf of you. And really, there's not even going to be an agreement since this is not an ODOT project. Once awarded, we will ask you to sign sort of an acknowledgement. And all that's saying is that you will have the funds spent by December 31st, 2024. You will show documentation of the project and that you will adhere to the Ohio Revised Code when applicable, and that you will be responsible for 100% of any of the cost overage. So no resolution needed, but just a heads up that that'll come with the award letter too. If you're awarded, we'll want you to sign that acknowledgement. It's just another layer of protection for us in the event Federal Highway has questions or ask for documentation. David, can this funding be used on asphalt resurfacing that has old chip and seal on surface now? Absolutely, yes, it may. Can a single road chip seal application include a guardrail upgrade? If it's along the same road, then yes, we would allow it. If you're doing a single road, because that would be more, even though it's chip seal, that would be kind of more in line with those roadway projects. So if it's one single road and you want to do chip seal and guardrail together, then yes, that can be on one application. But if you had one road for chip seal and then the guardrail was in a separate location, unfortunately, those would be two separate applications because they're different project types and different roadways. When a photo is added, is there an opportunity for a caption or description with that photo? Unfortunately, there's not. So what we have found is that a lot of people with our previous funding programs will copy and paste the photo into a Word document and then they can write the caption. And that also means they can put 5, 6, 7 photos on one Word document and upload it into one box. So that is a way to get around that. Seeing how much interest this program has generated, do you think it could be continued in the future? Ronnie, unfortunately, this is through the federal stimulus funds. So right now, this is a one-time program because of those CRISA stimulus funds that we got. So as of right now, we are not seeing this continued into the future. We are told that it is a one-time thing. So to be clear, if we have 3 separate roads that we would like paved, then we would submit 3 separate applications, one for each road. Yes. Is part of the program's intent that some of each type of project, road, culvert, and sidewalk, will be funded. Right now, we don't have that intent. It really just depends on the number of applications that come in, and if the proposed work matches the condition and if the estimate is reasonable. So there are a lot of varying factors that come into play. We certainly would like to fund several different projects for each type of project, but we just won't know until we get all of those applications in. But there's no hierarchy in terms of preference for one project over the other right now. Did I correctly hear that 2 connected segments of the same roadway would require 2 separate applications? No, this is not a roadway segment, and so that might be my fault with the terminology, roadway. And so what I've learned through this program is that you guys tend to think of a segment as intersection to intersection. But if you have a 2-mile stretch of roadway and it's all the same roadway, but there's multiple intersections with it, but you're staying on the same road, just one application. Can an engineering consultant complete an application on behalf of the township? Um, Unfortunately, while you may work with an engineering consultant, you need to complete the application yourself or get help from your MPO, RTPO, or county engineer. We do have some that have reached out to consultants to get an estimate, but we really, because of the $8 million and the 1,308 townships, the intent is to try to keep the project cost low if possible, but we do understand that, some of the townships don't have the experience and have to reach out for consultants. So we would never deter anybody from working with a consultant, but unfortunately the township would need to submit the application and complete it. Can a township apply for a cemetery road that is a public right-of-way that is owed as a union cemetery with another township, a village, and a city? The cemetery is in the township's jurisdiction. So this would depend. If it's in the township's jurisdiction, what's the maintenance agreement? Does the maintenance agreement say that the village, city, and township are all equally responsible for the maintenance? If so, the township could apply for their share of the maintenance or the work, but then the city and village would have to kick in funds for their part of the maintenance as well. The township stimulus program is not going to pay for something that is not 100% maintained by the township. And so if you have those agreements where maintenance responsibility is shared, then that other party would have to come to the table with their own funds for their share of the project. All right. What other questions do we have, Mike?
Thanks, Nicole. There are no additional questions at this moment.
Okay, perfect. So we'll jump right into the scoring criteria. And like I said, please don't hang your hat on the scoring criteria. I know that a lot of you are familiar with Ohio Public Works Commission and that the score is the driving factor with that, but this is a little bit different. So don't get kind of discouraged if you think your project won't score well. As I have said, these applications are going to go through multiple rounds of evaluation before the scoring even comes into play. That score is mainly going to be used to whittle the list down to get it within that $8 million budget. So all projects, regardless of if it's a culvert, roadway, or sidewalk, 80 out of the possible 100 points will all come from the same thing. And so those projects will be scored on your annual average daily traffic. And I'll talk about, if you don't have that, how to get that later. Your roadway functional classification, your economic health, and this would be the unemployment rate of the county the township is in compared to the statewide average. So if you're at or below the statewide average, you won't get any points, but if your unemployment rate is higher, you would get points. And this is nothing that you have to worry about. I do all of this with the economic health behind the scenes. Letter of support from your county engineer, and we do have a sample on our website. So if you follow that link, it'll take you right there. It's in that box with the related resources. Is the project within existing right-of-way? And we purposely did not say what documentation we wanted. We understand that every township is different, keeps different records. So just anything proving that the project is within existing right-of-way, such as land deeds, auditors' maps, previous court records, anything like that that you have that would show that it is within the right-of-way. If the township is within a qualified opportunity zone, a township does not have to be in a qualified opportunity zone to apply, but you do get points for that. So, and then has the township implemented permissive licensing fees? So we will look at the taxing district code book, and that link is found in our guidance. We will look at the taxing district code book to determine this. And so that's 80 of the possible 100 points. The other 20 depend on the type of project. So if it's a culvert, we will, the other 20 points will come from the sufficiency rating and culvert condition rating. Now, we did a lot of research before this, you guys. I promise we went to various agencies, talked to various offices, and so we really tried to do a lot of research before we put this scoring criteria together. But despite doing our due diligence, unfortunately, our experts are experts in assets that are not maintained by townships. And so once we realized this had all rolled out, the culverts don't have a sufficiency rating or a culvert condition rating. So if you do have a project, a culvert project, we do have that sufficiency rating input item form on our website under the related resources. I have a bridge engineer within our Office of Structural Engineering, Omar, who has so graciously offered to review that sheet, review photos, and then give you these values so that you can put them in the application. So what you would do is you would complete that sufficiency rating input item form, and then you would email that form to Omar with photos showing the condition of the bridge. He will give you your sufficiency rating and your culvert condition rating, and then you are able to input those values into the application. All I ask is that when you submit your application as one of the attachments, you also submit the correspondence from Omar so that we can verify the values. And then roadways, your pavement condition rating, and if it's a regional connector, And then for sidewalk projects, the number of users and public facility. So now, some of the items, we did go through this. How does an applicant obtain a sufficiency rating and culvert condition rating? So as I said, you would go to the website, complete that form, and then send that and the photos to Omar. Now, what we have found, I think it's human nature that some people wait till the very last minute. So with the deadline being November 19th, we didn't want Omar to get a ton of requests November 18th and 19th, and maybe he took a vacation day or he's gotten so many questions and requests that he's bombarded. So we do ask that your requests to Omar are submitted to him by November 12th. So that's a week before the application is due. This will give him time to review and research all of the requests, and then answer, if he has any additional questions, answer those. So how do you obtain your annual average daily traffic? So your MPOs and your RTPOs can help obtain the data if it's not in our transportation information mapping system. And again, TIMS, that TIMS link is found in the guidance as well. Or you can do a manual count. So honestly, I am okay with any reasonable evaluation. I know some have a method and it depends on the number of houses on the roadway. So as long as there's some logical reasonableness to how the value was obtained, we will take it. And so the same with the pavement condition rating. What I have found out is that it is all done differently throughout the state. So even within Odot, some districts do it themselves and some rely on central office. And so some county engineers do it themselves and some hire consultants. So if your county engineer is not familiar with the pavement condition rating process, or the township is not, we do have a PCR manual. Unfortunately, it's 192 pages long, but some county engineers are familiar and it does have a form in there, and so they can give you the rating for that. What we have been also suggesting is that if you find a comparable county or ODOT road that does have a PCR in TIMS, you can use that value. All we ask is that you provide photos of both roadways so that whoever is evaluating the application can look at them and say, okay, this is comparable. But again, any logical reasonableness to how the value was obtained, we will take. So the number of users for sidewalk projects. So if you have an existing sidewalk, we do have a pedestrian counter through our office of or ODOT's Local Technical Assistance Program. It is the equipment loan program, and you can see the link there. What I do ask is that you do not wait until the last minute. Again, there's only 2 or 3 of these available, and I know that Raymond Brushart in our LTAP office has already gotten a request for at least 1 or 2, and these can be out for 2 or 3 weeks. And then again, you could do a manual count. Now, obviously with new sidewalk, you would have to estimate the number of users, but again, any type of logical reasonableness, you know, hey, if you're connecting from a neighborhood to a school, we have X amount of students who live in this neighborhood who would walk to the school. And so anything like that to get the value. Then let's see, let's jump to questions.
Yes, there have been several additional questions.
Yeah, will a call from our state representative have any effect on the application? Unfortunately not. We do run into this a lot with some of our other funding programs too. And so, you know, unfortunately it wouldn't, because I know every state representative would be on the phone. So unfortunately, no, a call from the state representative would not have any effect on the application. Just to confirm, we don't need to submit proof of permissive tax and that you will confirm this yourself. Yes, so the application does ask you if you've implemented them, so it's just a yes or no, but I will check that myself. And then another thing that brings up a good point, Catherine, thank you. Another thing with the scoring is that I will determine the scores. You do not have to self-score your application, you just have to provide the requested information so that I can input the data and come up with the score. Regarding permissive licensing fees, is this asking if we have implemented the maximum permitted? I believe there are several townships that have a licensing tax but can levy an additional if they want to. Is this question asking if we have levied the additional? If I have this confused, just email me after. So it's not necessarily the max, it's just have they done any? And then what we have found too is that a lot of our townships, they haven't implemented the permissiving taxes, licensing taxes, but they have passed a roadway levy. So you wouldn't get any points for the licensing fees, unfortunately, but put somewhere in your application that the township has passed a roadway levy. Again, the scoring is not the end all be all, the driving force. We don't have to select projects in terms of how they score and the rank of score. But so even though you won't get the points for that, consideration will be given if a township has passed a roadway levy to generate funds for roadway improvements as well. Can we use streetlight to obtain number of pets? Yes, you may. What else do we have, Mike? Oh, for clarification, on a new sidewalk project, would number of households impacted suffice for supporting documentation on number of users? So if they're using it, and if there's a logical reasonable, so if you have, if it's connecting a low income neighborhood where maybe a lot of those residents don't have vehicles and they would rely on walking, then you could use that. But it has to be a reasonable level of users. So for example, the one with the school, it would depend, is it a high school? Is it a middle school? Is it an elementary school? If it's a high school, and even a middle school, those students may be walking by themselves, whereas if they're younger, a parent or a sibling may be walking with them. So just some reasonable logic as to how the value was obtained. What is a qualified opportunity zone? So Ohio has several of these zones. And again, there is a link in our guidance, and so it'll take you right to the map. But basically, these are zones that have been identified for potential job growth. Those zones have been determined that, hey, these areas have potential job growth and can stimulate the economy within those zones. So there is a link in our guidance. It'll take you right to the map. Must the project stand alone for bidding award, or may it be part of an annual project that our county engineer manages on behalf of multiple townships? It can be part of an annual project. We did get asked this question with specifically the pavement that people have. County engineers will ask what their priorities are, and then we will get they, not we, they will get bids on behalf, because you get better bids as part of a larger project. So yeah, the county engineer can do that on your behalf as part of larger projects for townships. Should we include PCR for non-road projects or public facility? No. So the application is set up so that you pick your project type. So if you pick roadway, only the PCR and the regional connector will show up. And then if you pick a sidewalk, only the number of users or public facility will show up. So you won't have to input that data if it doesn't pertain to your project type. Does a state park count as a public facility for criteria number 13? It could, yeah. So anything, schools, hospitals, libraries, businesses, restaurants, parks, yeah, anything that it would connect to that would generate pedestrians. And Mike, if you don't have anything, I'll go into my frequently asked questions real quick, because I know we're kind of coming up on time.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Nichole.
Yep. Okay, so I kind of touched on this already. Can you collaborate with other entities to create a larger project? And the answer is yes, you may. However, if the parts that do not meet the criteria for the program have to have another funding source. So if you're working with a county or a city and they have portions that they're responsible for, they have to have their own funding source. This program will not pay for anything that is outside the township limits and not maintained by the township. So the township is not within a qualified opportunity zone, but it is bordered by local public agencies that are. Will this be considered in the scoring? Unfortunately not. The township itself has to be wholly or partially within the qualified opportunity zone. And then to piggyback with the next question, the project itself does not, just the township. So I think I've touched on this. One road is shared by two townships. It's down the center line. one has the western lane, the other has the eastern lane. Can one township apply with an agreement with the other? In this scenario, yes, because the road is cut down the center lane where one has a western lane and one has an eastern lane. One township could apply for that road with a memorandum of understanding or agreement with the other township. Now, if it were opposite, where you had a whole segment and it abutted next to another segment, each township would have to apply separately for their segment of the roadway, because they maintain both lanes. They just don't maintain the whole section of the roadway. So for projects competitively bid per ORC 5575, which Ohio Revised Code 5575 outlines when they need to be competitively bid, would the state prevailing wages apply? And yes, they would apply in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 4115. Is preference given to those who apply first? No, all the applications will be evaluated at the same time at the end of the solicitation cycle. If we did a first come, first serve, we wouldn't get very good applications because everybody would be trying to get them in at once. And then I did answer this as well. Does the applicant score the application? No, I will take care of all of that. And then back to, what if money's left over? So if you do have money left over, we don't want a bunch of checks coming back for little amounts. So if for some reason you do have money left over, you can use that money for another eligible project. What you would need to do, though, is notify me of that and the attended project to get approval for that. So we don't want checks left over, but that's part of the reason why we make you submit an estimate with your application as well, because we don't want you padding the estimate to have money left over. And then at the same time, if the project is out to bid, or bids come in high, you then can reduce the scope of the project to fit that awarded amount as well. So you could reduce the scope of the project if bids come in high and it's over the award. You can reduce the scope. If we'd like to make our own preliminary score, do you have a list of county unemployment rates? I was not able to find them on the Ohio Job and Family Services website. So that is where I get the rates at. They are on there. They are difficult to find. However, I will pull October's data, which is not out there yet. October will be the latest data for that. So, and that is not out there yet. So, yeah, it's buried in their website, but it's under the communications. There's a couple different links that you have to take it to. So what I will say is, I know that there is a lot of interest in the program, but please don't let that discourage you from applying. If you don't apply, you definitely won't get any money. So with that, I think we've got a couple minutes, Mike, if anything else came in.
Okay, the questions box is open. Ronnie sent a link. She says, this is where I found unemployment rates for my county. So apparently there's an online resource for that.
Yeah, that's through Ohio Job and Family Services, and so that's where I'll pull it. They publish it each month. It's usually about a month behind, so by the time we're ready to do the scoring, we will use October's data.
Okay, let's see if there's any additional questions. And we don't see any at this time. Well, thanks, Nichole. Oh, here we go. One more. Oops. Okay, there we go.
Can I use the local county PCR, or do I have to use the Odot rating? Either way, like I said, some county engineers know how to calculate the PCR, some don't. Some hire consultants. Sometimes they're in TIMS, sometimes they're not. The PCR, there is some subjectivity to it. So as long as it's reasonable, then yeah, you can use the local county PCR evaluation.
Okay, one more. And here we go.
Is there guidance on recording funding in UAN, in i.e. separate fund? I will have to look into this. There is not on our website, but I will look into it. Township must be in qualified opportunity zone to even apply. No, they do not. You get points for it if they are, but you do not have to be in the qualified opportunity zone to apply. All townships are eligible to apply. Do we go to Township Stimulus Program guidance and the website will come up? So you can go to ODOT's main page. The link is for our website is within this PowerPoint 3 different times, beginning, end, and in the middle. So you can type that link in. But then also if you go to ODOT's main website and hit search and do Township Stimulus Program, that it'll show up. It used to be the 3rd search option. I think for some reason it's dropped now, might be the 7th or 8th, but it literally says Township Stimulus Program and it'll take you right there. Do you have to know upfront if the project will be bid as part of a larger multi-jurisdictional project? You do not have to know upfront, but what I would suggest is having that conversation. We don't want to award funding to an applicant and then the other participants are not willing. In addition, there will be a deadline for an acceptance. We don't want these projects to go you know, years and years and years, and then all of a sudden they're not going to come to fruition. Sorry, I'm trying to type too. Then we want to be able to have enough time that if that happens, we can pick a different project. So you will be asked to accept the funds, and usually that's about 3 to 4 weeks after the award letter goes out. And then that way, if for whatever reason you change your mind or you don't think it's going to happen, we can award to a different project. Can you repeat what you said about having multiple projects scheduled with the county engineer's office? I think that was in reference to the bids. So if your county engineer is bidding for multiple, you can take advantage of that to get better prices. All right, anything else, Mike?
We just have a few thank yous from the audience. So thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nichole, for presenting. In the chat box, we have copied Nichole's email address and phone number. So please feel free to contact Nichole if you have any additional questions. And it sounds like Arlo is chiming in, so.
Saving me from a delivery truck driver.
Hey, well, thanks everybody so much for participating today. We really appreciate it.